Hi, Emily. Can you hear me? Hi, Emily. Hi, Anne-Marie. Can you both hear? Hi, can you both hear me okay?
Yeah.
Feel free to put your cameras on if you want to. Anne-Marie, do you already use Mighty Writer?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And how are you getting on?
Yeah, it is really, really useful, especially when we're doing our writing planning and for children that are struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just useful to have those visuals and plan it out
Yeah.
first.
And how are you finding it in terms of adaptive teaching as well? That which is kind of what I'm going to focus on.
We've tried using it. I'll be honest, we've probably used it more as maybe whole class sort of
Okay.
input. It will be interesting to see how it can be used for
Yeah.
adaptive.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, so I'll talk you through it. I'll start in 5 minutes and then we can sort of have a question time if you want to, and then talk about how you might want to implement it.
Yeah, perfect.
Not really now, can we?
Pardon?
Sorry.
Hi,
can't figure out
Emily. Hi,
Turn the
Emily. Can you
camera.
hear me okay?
Hi, yes, sorry, I didn't have my
Hi.
camera plugged in
No,
last time.
that's
I
all
thought I
right.
did.
No, it's all right. I mean, obviously people don't have to put cameras on, but it is helpful because it just feels like you can actually have a proper, you know what I mean, a proper chat and
Yeah.
kind of actually discuss it and everything. How are you getting on with Mighty Writer? Presumably you've got it as well.
So yeah, we have Mighty Writer, but it's not particularly being very used.
Okay.
I'm literacy lead and I'm year 5-6 teacher, so I'm kind of more looking at what other people are doing in terms of then going back to school. How can we do it? Yeah. Maybe I can use it with some of my year 5-6. Oh, and there's a colleague online as well. Cool.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's really good then. Yeah, so because I mean the thing is you want ideas. This is designed to be really simple to use, and I mean, not just in your literacy time, but at other times of the day, even if it's just 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, to really embed all the ways you want them to view writing and to start to apply it for themselves. So hopefully this is going to be a really good session. It'll be great if people can contribute or say what they're struggling with or why things aren't working or how well things are working, because then we can kind of share ideas and motivate one another, which is really the idea, really. Hi, Oliver.
Sorry, I was sending a few out to sports clubs and then.
Sorry. How are you getting on with Mighty Writer?
I have not particularly used it, being honest. This is my first year in teaching.
Okay.
And my first year in the school, so I've signed up to see what it's all about.
Okay,
and
fine.
I know now that
Thank you.
we've
Sorry.
got a big booklet in the school, so
Yeah. Okay, fine. And also, you can have additional training. You just go on the website and you can book a slot. So if you're finding actually I've got questions about it, you can just go on and have your own training.
okay, that's cool.
So everybody's got the support. Jennifer, how about you? How are you getting on?
I'm being very technically illiterate today. All right, I teach year 1, so we've used it quite a lot.
Okay.
But when I do our independent writing, it is quite small groups, so it's quite useful for us to use it in small groups, and it works quite well for that.
Good. So yeah.
Some of the more lower ability, like the pictures, and it does definitely jog the memory as to what they should be putting in, and the adverbs and the verbs and things that we're using. So it's very good for that.
Okay, good. So would you say that their understanding and use of, say, verbs and adverbs is improved using Mighty Writer?
Possibly, yeah. For the more able, yeah.
Okay, fine. The other people that I can't see, is anybody happy to just sort of share how they're getting on with it before I make a start? If your cameras aren't on, if you're happy to kind of share. If not, don't worry. No, okay, that's fine. Right, I'm going to make a start then. So the focus today is adaptive teaching. So I've planned all this and I've written it all down. So I'm going to, read from the notes as well as look at you, because I want to make sure I've covered everything. But I'm quite passionate about the fact that Mighty Writer can be used to teach all children really, really successfully, and you can use it in so many different ways. So thinking just about adaptive teaching as a sort of principle, adaptive teaching is an approach where teachers tailor their teaching to meet the diverse needs of all the learners in the classroom. So that means content, delivery, pace and support can be adjusted based on pupils' knowledge, their abilities and their learning styles. So there's 6 main features to this. The first one is adaptive teaching is obviously responsive to assessment. So teachers are using formal and informal assessments to understand what pupils know, what they can do, and then adapt their teaching accordingly. Secondly, it's inclusive, so means that all pupils, including SEN, EAL, are able to access the curriculum. It's flexible, so children can be grouped in different ways at different times, depending on the task and their needs and their progress. Number 4, tasks are scaffolded and support structures, like, for example, sentence starters or visual aids, can help support pupils and then gradually be reduced as pupils become more independent. And thinking about Mighty Writer, the idea is that if children are using this right from reception all the way through to the year 2, that they are so confident at understanding what everything on the Mighty Writer mat is, and they're able to use it accurately and independently in their writing. The idea is they don't need it as they go into Key Stage 2, so that you're gradually reducing the reliance on the visuals and the sort of tactile element, and they can start to really be able to organise words in their own heads. Number 5, it's challenges. So adaptive teaching also stretches more able pupils with greater depth tasks or extension activities. Number 6, it allows access, enabling every child to engage with the same ambitious curriculum. So the idea being that all children, we have high, we want them to aim high. And this is why from reception with Mighty Writer, I'm saying to teachers right from the start in the autumn term, start using even the verbs and adverbs symbol. So even though you're not necessarily expecting them to use it, you are starting to expose them to it. They're seeing it when you're modelling, when you're making up sentences in a very relaxed way. They're not expected to participate necessarily, they're just seeing it. So over time, they're making the connection between the vocabulary and the symbol they see. They're hearing all that in stories anyway. So it's giving them maximum opportunity to have maximum exposure to that until they can start to apply it for themselves. So to achieve all these things for adaptive teaching, it's obviously essential that teachers know their pupils well. I mean, no resource can take that, and adapt teaching without lowering expectations. So this is obviously, in a nutshell, high quality teaching, and that in itself maintains high expectations for all children. So Mighty Writer will support these aims every step of the way, and it's a very powerful tool for adaptive teaching. It provides a multi-sensory, highly visual and flexible framework that supports all learners, regardless of their ability, their background or their learning need. It allows every child to access, engage with and succeed in talking and then into writing. So you can use Mighty Writer for all children to engage with the same learning objective with different levels of support and challenge. So, for example, if we were creating a story for my SEN or emerging writers, they might just use the picture tiles. So everything else on the mat would be taken off and they would only see the pictures. And it would be focusing on adult scribing or voice to text support, so that children are able to select the pictures, make connections. Even if an adult is then connecting those 2 pictures together to make a sentence, the fact is they chose the pictures, they have been successful. So you can start really where you need to. Even if a child is just choosing one picture, you might make up an observation about it or talk about that picture. So it's always starting from them. EAL children, you can match image tiles with spoken language, building their oral language skills. And visuals really help to build the vocabulary gaps, because obviously a lot of these children, these EAL children, are actually, very capable, but they just don't have the language to access, and they can't necessarily always show their understanding. And the Mighty Writer Mat is really successful with EAL children, because they are able to very quickly show their understanding and make rapid progress in sort of connecting ideas and making sentences. For more able writers, thinking about creating a story, you obviously can encourage increasing use of, sophisticated sentences, varied sentence openers, descriptive vocabulary, alternative endings, editing, extending stories. I mean, it's limitless, really. I mean, you can make very sophisticated stories with this. And I mean, you might be using fronted adverbials in year 1, for example. So you really can meet the needs of all the children. And a lot of the time when you're modelling using Mighty Writer, you're really teaching to the tops. So all your children are given exposure to all those sort of higher order skills, and they're given opportunity to see language in context. So if I was maybe making up a sentence in reception at the end of the day, and I just had 5 minutes and the children were all watching me, I'm not necessarily just going to use sentence starters like once, then next. I'm going to start using a variety. So I might say, at that very moment as a sentence starter. So they're hearing that language, they're seeing me use it in context to kind of encourage them to start thinking about what they want to start their sentences with. So, I'm modelling fronted adverbials right from the word go, because that's what they're hearing in stories. And Mighty Writer allows me to do that. Now, obviously, most children in reception might not start writing those words or using that in their sentences, but the fact is that somewhere inside their brain they are hearing that, and it's eventually going to click, and they will start to use it because that has been in their kind of repertoire. So thinking through how you can use Mighty Writer for adaptive teaching. Scaffolded learning through visual and kinesthetic support, which is in essence what Mighty Writer is. So you can do sentence structures, genre patterns, and they are physically built and seen on here. Pupils can manipulate the tiles, they can improve their fine motor skills, their memory, and their sentence fluency. And the idea is you build it up over time according to the needs of your children. So, some children, it might be they're literally selecting one picture. You might have it on the floor, they're just taking one picture, you might be talking about it, or they might talk about it. Some children might be just connecting 2 pictures together. Some children might do quite a long-winded story, connecting maybe 25 pictures together. So it's really just starting to build on their understanding of how to select ideas and how to sequence them, how to connect them, how to recall them. So letting them have the opportunity to really explore language for themselves and start to feel freedom in terms of editing, in terms of changing their mind. So, if I was building a sentence with the class, I might have this totally blank, and I might ask, let's say, 3 children to choose a picture each. And I might stick those pictures on the board, and then I would think of a way to connect those pictures together to make a simple sentence. So children are starting to realise that actually our imagination knows no bounds, that we can collect ideas in lots of different ways. And then it might be over time, they're starting to select ideas, they're starting to suggest how they could make a story. And the teacher is never on the spot. So you never have to know everything, or you never have to think too much on your feet, because if children have chosen like 3 pictures and you're wanting to connect that into a sentence and you can't think of any way to do it, the whole point is you can say to the children, could that make a sentence? Can anyone think of how we could make that into a sentence? So that they're encouraged to try it, use their imagination. And if no one can, then we just swap a picture. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility, and it really starts to help children think about editing skills and reviewing and improving without feeling they're going wrong, or without feeling they've made a mistake and they don't want to change it. Because so many teachers I speak to, they say their children are getting into year 4, getting into year 5, and they are not engaged with the editing process. They've done their writing, but they haven't got ownership over it. They're not wanting to go back and improve it. So it's really right from reception, using the Mighty Writer Mat to get children into the mindset of being a writer and actually personally really enjoying it. So, like I've just said, teachers can model, but then they can gradually remove the supports. So, and that is obviously a key principle of scaffolding in adaptive teaching. Secondly, Mighty Writer builds oracy and writing together. So the key thing with Mighty Writer is, yes, obviously it's all very visual, but anything I model on here, I will always model then scribing. So even if we've taken one picture and a child has made a statement about it, or we've whatever, I would model writing that. Or if we've made up a sentence together, I would say to the children, that was a fantastic sentence. Could you say it out loud again? Because I would like to write it down. And I would have my whiteboard and pen. I would model that, writing that sentence. The children can support me with their phonics, their spelling. And then at the end, I would make a point of going back. And as I say that sentence, pointing to each word, you know, to check that it makes sense, to check I haven't left any words out. So kind of modeling, even if you're not saying anything, you're modeling that process of how to, you know, check for sense and all those things. So children talk before they write, which obviously is obviously known, and that obviously boosts vocabulary, confidence, and sentence planning. So it's really getting children wanting to talk and wanting to engage with the process of creating and organising ideas. Because, you know, even you're getting to year 6, you've got some children, okay, they've done fine, you know, they're jogging along, but actually when they get to it, if they have, I've got to go and do a writing task, they're sitting there and they're thinking, I don't know what I want to write about, you know. So it's kind of right from the start, helping children really believe in themselves and have ownership over their ideas. Teachers can adapt questioning and discussion, you know, based on ability. So, you know, it's all about the questions you're asking, knowing when to question, knowing when to intervene, and knowing when to just hold back and just watch the children. Because with Mighty Writer, the thing is, they can't go wrong. So you will never have to say to them, oh no, sorry, you can't put that picture there. Because immediately you do that for so many children, that the barrier goes up and they're thinking, oh, I could go wrong, so I don't want to have a go. So that's why if you had this on the floor and you had a small group of children around, and they were just selecting pictures and sticking them on randomly, and no one was saying anything, or they weren't making up sentences, it doesn't matter. I would just, if they had placed 2 pictures quite close together, I would think of a way to connect them to make a sentence. And I would just say, oh, wow, look at the sentence you've thought of. They might have said nothing, but the fact is what they have done is successful. They made a sentence. Now, if I'm constantly reinforcing that positive, you know, and I sometimes might even scribe that as well, that is constant positive reinforcement for them. If they are, you know, making up a story and starting to connect it with the arrows, they don't have to start in the top left. They might start, you know, in the bottom right. It doesn't matter. They have the freedom to express themselves how they want to, and it will make sense because they'll show me how they're connected by the way they've connected the arrows. So it's just allowing them to go through that process and allowing them to spend as much time as they need to on each stage. So your modelling is always often well ahead of what they are doing, but you're giving them the time they need at the stage they're at. Group storytelling encourages peer modelling and differentiation. And then you've got immediate formative assessment. So teachers can observe how children build the stories and sentences. They can spot misconceptions or lack of understanding really quickly, just because it's so visual. So, you know, you might be working on literally single sentences. You know, the green is the introduction, build up, the beginning and build up, the orange is the middle, the red is the end. But initially, when you start to introduce just the sentence mat, you're literally just doing maybe like one sentence at a time. So you're really getting that foundation of what a sentence is, that children are understanding. They choose a sentence starter, they've got the content, and then they have the full stop and being able to hear where that full stop goes. And it's really about teaching them how to build a sentence from scratch and doing all that sort of open-ended questioning, encouraging children to think for themselves. You know, could I have another sentence starter? What else could we include in the sentence? Could we have an adjective? So starting to get them to think so that they're making the choices. And then when they're going away and planning it for themselves, they've already got a really good idea of how to go through the process of reviewing and improving. This allows real-time adaptive responses. So, you know, I can reteach, I can group, I can change my group, or, you know, I could do targeted support. So, you know, I can depends how I want to organize it throughout the day, whether I'm saying, right, I want these two children just to have more time. I want them to have an extra 5 minutes a day working together, just literally selecting pictures and talking. And obviously you have different amounts of TA support depending on the year groups you're in. But the idea is that you're not having to, this shouldn't have to make a problem for you. You know, it shouldn't be an add-on. It should be a case of thinking, this is my busy timetable. How can I most effectively use Mighty Writer in my classroom to suit the needs, my needs and the needs of the children? You know, and it might even be as something simple as, you know, you've got it on the wall. The children are lined up for assembly, and we're just going to do literally 1 minute on adjectives. And somebody's going to select a picture and put it in the middle of the mat, and then we're going to think of 4 adjectives. So we'll stick the stars around that picture. So we're building their memory and developing their vocabulary. So that might just take 1 minute, but the fact is, if I'm doing that 3 or 4 times a week, very, very quickly children know what an adjective is, and they're really starting to compete with the most interesting ones, the most ideas. So then they're starting to apply it in their planning and in their writing. So you don't have to just formally do, right, this morning I'm doing 5-minute input on adjectives and I'm not revisiting it again for a while. You can drip feed all these things. And then, you know, if I'm modelling at the end of the day, then I might think, okay, then, well, I did do a bit of focus on adjectives. I'm going to make a point of going back on my sentence and improving it by adding an adjective. So I'm going over and over the same things every time, but just with different content. Mighty Writer, with Mighty Writer, you can have an inclusive classroom environment. So it supports universal access to learning. So it's visual, it's auditory and tactile learners, all of them benefit. And it fosters collaborative learning, which obviously is really important because it allows them to talk and it allows them the time they need and, you know, at the pace they need. So this is really about getting children on board with enjoying using language, talking, organising their ideas and understanding that it's not just about word choice, but it's about word order. So that they're starting to move things around, what sounds better. So even if I'm working with, like, say, a lower ability child in reception, and then even if they've got literally no vocabulary, let's say they had chosen an alien and the dinosaur, then I might say to them, oh, wow, the friendly alien met a large dinosaur. Or could I swap them around? What would it say now? So even with children who are non-verbal or children who have very limited vocabulary, right from the start, I'm making them understand that we can move words around. So we can swap ideas and we can change the way the sentence sounds. And that leads very nicely into, say, fronted adverbials later on. So there's a tremendous amount I can do at the very beginning, which is building a very strong foundation for their understanding of how language works and how it is built up. It's flexible use across the curriculum. So it's not just limited to narrative, Mighty Writer. I mean, the idea is if it was, then it wouldn't be helpful because how would you do everything else? You know, the idea is that on here, you've got everything you need to teach children all the genres. So what you're thinking as the teacher is, what do they need to know? You know, we're writing letters. They need to know how to lay out a letter. They need to know the type of vocabulary we're using, you know, the persuasive language. So you can do all that on here. So in terms of these Mighty Writer sentence maps, obviously for each colour you have 2 different lengths. So if I was doing a start of a letter, I could write the word dear on that blank. You know, we might be writing to the head teacher and then we're going to have a comma. And then I might just have 2 or 3 greens for the introductory paragraph, 2 or 3 oranges for the middle, 2 or 3 reds for the end. If I was doing a set of instructions, I don't need the different colour mats. I can just use the greens and I could put them one underneath the other with the arrows pointing down. So the children understand you have 1 instruction on each line. Down here on my sentence starters, I can have my bossy verbs, my time connectives, and together we can build that set of instructions. And I can extend it as I need to. You know, I want every sentence to have a conjunction in it, or I want every sentence to have an adverb in it. So just depending on what the children are, you know, wanting to do and what they are able to do. So if I'm doing poetry, even, let's say I'm in reception and I'm doing fireworks, we might have had a thing where we've thought of lots and lots of adjectives. So we've done a similar thing where we've put something in the middle and we thought of lots of adjectives. We then might make a poem just by connecting pictures with the arrows and using the adjectives. And so we're doing it in a swirl shape, like a Catherine wheel. And that is just those pictures and those adjectives. The children will be able to remember that poem. So it's, you know, you can do absolutely anything you want to. If you're doing non-chronological reports, you can use the different colours to represent different sections. You can label them, you know, habitat, diet, whatever it is, so that children can really clearly associate, you know, that genre with how that's laid out and the type of vocabulary, and just making it really clear for them. And it's not necessarily either about having to model hundreds of sentences on here. You know, the idea of this is that I am teaching children to be able to do this in their own head. So it's very powerful the way I am modeling, building up and editing sentences, you know, changing our mind. Let's swap that sentence starter. Could we add an adjective? What would that sound like? Could I use any other form of punctuation? Or is it just a full stop? So I'm constantly asking those questions so that children just get really good at then going away and knowing what they want to say and knowing how they're going to say it. So, you know, we might have done a story plan on here for, let's say, the beginning of a story, and I've literally just done, as a class, for 10 minutes, we've built the first 2 sentences. But my children understand, you know, they know what they're going to say, they know who their character is going to be, they've got really good ideas about how they're going to describe it, where the character lives. Off they go, they're going to go, and some children might write 4 or 5 because they're so inspired, they understand what they're doing. And a lot of the time with Mighty Writer, it's children going away but not working on their own. On the website, you'll see, I expect you've all seen these, but maybe you haven't. There's mini Mighty Writers, which can be enlarged to A3. And the idea is because you want children to work together, always talking about word choice and how they're organised. So there's lots of these. These are all adapted to different genres and everything. The idea is if you print them out to A3, they're bigger and the children can work together and they're talking. What's our sentence starter? What couple of pictures do we need to draw? Shall we go back and add an adjective? Should we add a conjunction? Does it make sense? Saying it out loud, checking for sense, and then writing it down, just like they've seen me do on here. So, you know, you can build it up and actually have a focus for recording. In reception, all my emergent writing and mark making will go alongside this initially, so that I'm sure that children are choosing to mark make, that they realise it has meaning, that they're motivated to write, that they're developing those fine motor skills. You know, all the things you already do, you just do alongside Mighty Writer. So, like I said, it's not limited to narrative. You can use it for non-fiction. I mean, like sequencing life cycles even. You can apply it in PSHE for emotions or personal stories, you know, talking about how, you know, coming to school makes them feel or whatever. You can adapt it for cross-curricular writing, so in history, geography or RE. So, you know, there's lots of opportunity to use it in order to reinforce all those sort of key objectives which are going to make them independent writers. While working with groups or one-to-one, you can take off or add to the mat whatever you need to meet the needs of the pupils and then support them accordingly. So, you know, if I'm working with my whole class for an input, I need to make sure that on the mat, I've got absolutely everything my most able children need in order that they can make progress in the input. If I'm then sending the children away and they're working, some are working independently, but some are going to be working with me, I might then take that off the wall, put it on the floor, and I might need to take off quite a few things. So let's say I'm just working with my lower ability year 1 children autumn term, and we are just recapping on a simple sentence. So I'm literally just going to have the full stop, the pictures, and maybe limit it to 4 sentence starters. So they have a choice immediately, but it's not an overwhelming choice, so that they're not sort of required to run before they can walk, but their progress is still very rapid because they very quickly grasp the, you know, and understand it. So you can also spend as much time as you need on each stage, like I just said, so the children build a very strong foundation. And modelling with Mighty Writer, my feeling is that that is often the most powerful way of giving access to the higher order skills and advanced vocabulary, because whatever I have been working with as a whole class, whatever we have been doing, you know, for 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, whatever we've been working on in small groups, I can consolidate that at the end of the day in a story time. Because let's say I was in year 1 and we had spent the week building a short story, i.e. 1 green, 1 orange, 1 red for a beginning, middle and end, say autumn term. And we've edited it. We're really happy with it. We know it off by heart. I've modelled scribing that. The children have then gone away and planned their own short stories, maybe in pairs. On the end of the week, on Friday afternoon, I might then get them all sat round it and I'm going to make up a story just with 3 sentences. I'm just going to have totally different content, and the children can see me select my sentence starter, select the pictures, select the punctuation. They can see me go back, change my mind, want to improve it. I'm going to add an adjective. And if I'm doing that on a very regular basis, those things are just habits that the children just adopt for themselves, because my modelling has been so powerful. And when I'm modelling it as well, the children are not required to do anything, so they are not feeling under pressure, so therefore they are very relaxed. And obviously when they are relaxed, that is when they're much more able to take on board new learning. And actually modelling at the end of the day, like I would in reception, is a really good opportunity to introduce symbols and vocabulary that they might not be using, but that I want them to start seeing in preparation for when I introduce it, so that when I do introduce it more formally, you know, as my learning objective, the children are already familiar with it. They've already seen it. I've given them opportunity to, you know, be able to apply it a lot more quickly, because I've just given them that exposure. And that's why from the beginning of reception, I would have shown them everything on here, and I would be using verbs and adverbs and adjectives all the way through. So, I mean, that's kind of how you can use Mighty Writer. I mean, obviously I haven't gone through sort of individual lesson plans. I hope that's given you quite a good idea. But obviously, like I said, the training, you can just access it by going on the website and booking it. If you want training, more training for your school, more training for TAs, whatever it is, because, or you might say, look, we've got a specific focus on this. Could you help us with this? Or would you be able to work with some of our teachers that are doing, our TAs that are doing one-to-one, or with the interventions for EAL children? And then I will happily support with that. So I don't know, it would be really good if people do have a response to this and sort of say if that was helpful and how they feel, if it's given them any ideas. Does anyone want to sort of kick off?
I can. I thought it was really, really useful. I've made loads of notes, thought about which children actually who, as I said, I'm in 5-6, but I've got a group of children who I know I have currently, who I know will be coming up to me, who I think this would be really good. And even actually just the idea of just using the coloured ones to, like for writing balanced arguments, kind of go, well, we need an introduction, a conclusion, they're green, then some orange, then some red.
Yes.
Which that would help everybody. So it wouldn't just be a...
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. This is not prescriptive, you see. This is just progressive. So, you know, if you know your children, you just think to yourself, I've got everything I need on here. How can I get this a concept across to my children? How can I get them to understand it? How can I get them to really picture it in their head and then start to apply it? You know, and Key Stage 2, what is it about these children where they have got gaps? What is it? Are they not using a range of sentence starters? Are they always consistently using then? Can they hear where a full stop goes? And it's those key things that are holding them back that you can then say, right, on here, that is what we're focusing on. So you can be extremely specific as you move into Key Stage 2, because even those children that are not applying it, they actually do have a background of literacy because they have been in school and they have been exposed to it, whether or not they're applying it. So it all starts to, suddenly the light goes on. Oh yeah, that was my missing link. Now I get it. I'm suddenly moving on, if you see what I mean. Thank you very much, Emily. That was really helpful. Has anybody got any other? Oh, thanks, Caroline. Can anybody ask any other questions?
I've made loads of notes as well. Emily and I are in the same school. She's year 5-6, I'm year 3 and 4, but I've done the same. I've written down children I've got now and children I know are coming up next year who will really benefit from this. But it's also about, I thought, like having the ability to create those sentence starters for everybody that they can then use and change. So you've got the ones that can be stretched and pushed, can change those sentence starters and use the other words that they've been exposed to. But then you've got ones that can just take that straight away and start their writing from that sentence starter, and then use the red and the green and the orange to build their writing in the arrows.
Yeah.
I was going to just ask. I mean, I think we've got a whole set in school. I think. Is there a way we can like copy those or something so we can all use them in class, or can we get the symbols and the pictures and things from somewhere else?
Everything comes with the mat, basically. So for every mat you get everything here. So it depends how many, you know, I mean, you can email us saying what you need.
Yeah, okay.
Because all these,
because we all do English at the same time, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to share it.
No, but also there's loads of different, you see, this is the main set with you get those two toolbars at the top. Now they are designed to be deliberately generic, so that you can do fiction and non-fiction with them. It's like a good starter pack, and it just makes children good at using their imagination, connecting ideas. So like, for example, like that jar could be medicine, could be a magic potion, you know, so that you're encouraging children to think outside the box. What could that represent in my story? But there's also lots of other toolbars. So like this yellow one, there's two of these, that's real life, and it's all your non-fiction. You've also got traditional tales and lots of different topics. They're color coded so you can mix and match. So you might want to go just on the website and just have a look at what's there, because you do want one in every class, because you don't just want to use it in literacy, you want it there. You want to be able to, if possible, use it 2 minutes here, you know, right, it's lunchtime. Yeah. I'm going to put a green sentence on the mat. Right, can somebody choose a sentence starter? Can somebody choose 2 pictures? Can somebody choose a full stop? Right, what could that sentence say? You know, right, how could we improve it? Right, somebody says, let's add an adjective. Let's swap the full stop for an exclamation mark. And that might take 2 minutes, but the fact is, that is such good exposure to building a sentence from scratch. And it just teaches children to also be very quick at it very early on. So it's really useful to have one in every class, I would say. But also, you've got blanks, like you saw on there. So, and all the blanks, there's loads of blanks. You've got blanks for everything around the edge, and you can use a normal whiteboard pen and just rub it off afterwards. So you're never limited to just those. And you know, in reception, if I'm making up a short sentence at the end of the day, I'm not just going to limit myself to once, next, then, you know, words that I want them to use. I'm going to use, like I said, you know, at that very moment, the dinosaur met an alien. So I want to use vocabulary that's going to stretch them, and I want it to be as varied as possible, and I can visually represent it.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
So don't worry, Caroline. Thanks for that. It doesn't matter if you can't access your camera. Oh no, is that somebody else said that? Oh no. Has anybody got anything else to add? No. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining the chat. I really hope it was helpful. And if moving forward you do want more support, or you've got some questions, or you think actually it'd be really good if these people in the school were trained on this, then please go on the website and you can just book it. You don't have to email back and forth. It's really straightforward. And I'd be really happy to help. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.